I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Karen Booth. She's written 34 books in the contemporary romance genre and she lives in North Carolina. Welcome, Karen.
Hello.
So would you like to start by walking through some of the books that you've written?
Sure. I'm a hybrid author, so I indie publish, and then I also write for Harlequin Books, which most people who read romance have heard of. A lot of people who haven't read romance have heard of Harlequin. Harlequin is sort of the day job side of what I do. And I write just sort of steamy contemporary romance. I try to, I love writing lots of family saga, lots of multi-generational drama and kind of meaty storylines.
Cool. Sounds great. So first question is, why do you write? So what inspired you to write 34 so far contemporary romance novels?
I come from a long line of writers, like my dad, my aunt, my grandfather, and it's been kind of all over the map. You know, my aunt was a journalist. My dad has written screenplays. My brother likes to write, even though he's former police officer turned security guard. He likes to write. He's been in anthologies. So anyway, I think it's just kind of in the water, in my blood. And I can't really imagine doing anything else. Even if I had a different full-time job, I would still write. It's just kind of built in.
So when did you release your first book?
The first book came out in 2012. It wasn't the first book I wrote, which is one of those things you learn. Yeah. I think you always think, okay, I wrote this first book, then that's going to be the first book it came out of. I think it was the third book I'd written. And the first book I wrote is a book called Bring Me Back, which is now indie published, but which was originally with a small press. And I wrote that in 2009. Because I just had this idea in my head for a long time and I didn't know if I could write a book. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try it. And I really expected to get stuck or quit. You know, a lot of people who've been working on a book for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, started one, couldn't finish. I sort of anticipated I would end up in that category, but I didn't.
Well, clearly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned being hybrid. What proportion of your books are traditional or indie published?
Right now, that proportion is probably about 2/3 traditional, 1/3 indie. That could change. Part of what I do for Harlequin, there's so much... you have to build momentum and you have to get spots on the release schedule. And so there is a lot of, I can't really afford to set it aside or spend a few months just thinking about things. I have to keep that going or else I'm going to lose what I've built so far.
Right.
And for me, it's good. I do like the traditional side just in terms of I like writing the book and handing it off and letting someone else do it. But then, I like the indie side because I like to be creative with marketing. I like designing graphics. I like figuring out advertising and that aspect of things. So I guess I get to do both basically.
Yeah. Going forward, is that something that you consider the part of your career as in being a hybrid author? Is there one that's sort of dragging you closer than the other?
No, again, I think it's just, I am drawn to both sides. I like the stability. of being a traditionally published author. And that's an odd scenario. Most traditionally published authors, I don't think, feel stable in that position. But I write category romance for Harlequin. And so it's just a very well-honed system within Harlequin. The book comes out in the US. Most books come out in 12 to 18 other languages. There's just a whole machine behind it that I don't have to do anything. It's just there.
Yeah.
And so I know roughly what every book is going to sell. Some do better, some do worse, but roughly I know what's going to sell. So I do like that side of it. But, there's a little bit of a box you're writing in. And so in terms of creativity, I do need to stretch my legs. And so that's the indie side, pushing, just stories I want to write that, maybe a traditional publisher doesn't see an audience for, but I know it's there.
Yeah. Okay, well, question number 2 is, how do you write? So do you tend to plot the stories out beforehand or just sort of pants them, as they say?
I have, again, come to sort of a hybrid method. I'm sort of somewhere in between. I definitely, the first few books I wrote, I was pantsing it the whole way. And then I figured out that I could save myself a lot of frustration if I do some planning ahead of time. I really need to wrap my head around who the characters are, what they want, what the conflict is, or else I'm just kind of floundering. So I do spend a fair amount of time planning, and that planning's on a very micro level, even though I don't plan out the whole plot, but I do try to get very granular with the essence of the story. So I'll spend a few weeks writing a 2 to 3 paragraph blurb for the book. Right. That is, just what are the hooks? What's going to sell this book? What's going to make people want to grab it off the virtual shelves? I just think once that is plugged in and it's set in stone and it feels real to me, then I can kind of let my creativity go. But at the beginning, I do start on that very sort of small, up close, look at the book, and then I go from there. I'll take the scenes that I see and I put those in order, and then I try to kind of sketch in what connects A to B to C to D, and then I'll start writing. But I try to do more planning than I did when I first started.
Yeah. And is there a particular software that you prefer using?
I use Scrivener to do all my drafting. I like being able to, see in the binder the different scenes and being able to move things around and, leave myself notes. It's just, it works well for me. I'm not sure. I know for certain that I do not use all of Scrivener's functionality at all.
Yeah.
But I use enough that it is comfortable for me and I can be super productive. So I used to write in Word, and that was just, so much scrolling and trying to find where you were and move things around. It just I couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
If you have to go back and remember what a character's wearing or something like that, it becomes a bit of an ordeal.
Right. Exactly.
All the way back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a particular time and place that you prefer writing?
I try to do most of my drafting in the morning. Like, I'm one of those people who gets up at 5 a.m. and writes. Right. I'm super productive before anyone else in the household is up. So I just kind of make some coffee and I sit on the couch with my laptop and in those first, kind of 2 hours of the day, I can usually write more than I write in the whole entirety of the rest of the day. Yeah. But it depends. There are times when I'm working on 2 books at one time. And so at that point, I kind of use lunchtime as the delineation, and I'll work on one book in the morning and then the other book in the afternoon. I usually make myself work on whatever is more difficult in the morning.
Right.
Just because, as the day goes on, it gets away from you. You get emails and Facebook and Twitter. And so try to do the hard part in the morning.
Yeah. How's it juggling two books? Do you find that it gets a bit blurry between the two?
It's funny. I thought for a long time that I couldn't do it, but that was before I tried it. And actually, if I keep the day structured and say, this chunk of time is for the first book and this chunk of time is for the second book, it works well. I would say that when I'm writing two books, they're usually not very similar books. And the times when I've done it most successfully, I'm doing one is a book that will be traditionally published, where I'm writing in that kind of box and I have the parameters that I have to meet. And then usually the other book is an indie book where I'm, doing my own thing and not worrying so much about the rules or whatever. But I've found it's manageable. I can't do it all the time. It does take a lot of energy and emotional and just kind of bandwidth, I guess.
Yeah.
But I definitely can do it for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and then I need a little bit of a break.
Fair. Okay, well, question number 3 is, are you a full-time author? If you are, how did you get there? And if you aren't, what steps are you taking to make it happen?
I am a full-time writer. I've been writing, I've been writing full-time really since I started, but that was only because, at that point in 2009, my kids were little, so I was a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And, they weren't that little. They were third and fifth grade, I think. And so at that point I was, just kind of squeezing in writing time, and I had a part-time job that I did from home. So, but it's just been a gradual thing. Harlequin is definitely the thing that allows me to write full-time and to know roughly how much money I'm going to make. So I've been doing that, I would say, like making a full-time salary income since 2015. Wow. And again, I think juggling two sides has just paid off well, having the stability of Harlequin and then just trying to be smart about the indie stuff I'm doing, because I don't devote all of my writing time to it. So I have to make sure that it's a book or books that I feel really strongly about, that I know I can market and sell, that I know fit with the other books that I've previously published. I would say those are the main kind of components. Definitely just being smart and being very deliberate about the ways I choose to use my time.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made and what have you got right?
This question just makes me laugh because really that could be a whole separate show.
Yeah.
I thought about this for a while. I guess, I don't want to think of mistakes as mistakes, because if you learn from it, then it's just a lesson, and I don't know, maybe it's just getting older or something. I try not to be too hard on myself. I'm like anybody, I've wasted money on ads. I've taken productivity courses that were a total waste of time. I've gone to conferences that were a waste of time and money. But I've also done those things and they've been productive and good. And, I feel like even the bad things you can, glean some little nugget of wisdom from. As far as, just sort of the one thing that I've definitely done right, and I think my background before writing and before kids was in music, and I worked in the music industry and I did marketing, and my husband actually owns a small marketing company. So definitely paying attention to that aspect of things and trying to just see where books are going to sell, who they're going to sell to, how they're going to sell. That has been, a good kind of skill that I've been able to hone. And then just realizing that sometimes you do need to, if you can, I know not everyone is able to do this, but if you can, find the expert and pay them to do it.
Yeah.
I have a publicist and she's been amazing for me. And she could put my book in front of eyeballs that I could never get to. And that's kind of a process, because I've definitely hired some people who weren't great, but once you find someone good, and if they're an expert, and if you can do it, fork over the money.
Yeah, we can't all be experts in editing and cover design and all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, question number 5 is, what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
I would say it's like writing in general. The only way that this industry is going to beat you is if you quit.
Right.
So, when you are becoming an indie author and starting, there are a lot of skills you need to gain, that go beyond writing, formatting, design, hiring, subcontractors to do things like design for you, or, a publicist or marketing or whatever. So I guess, I think you need to be patient with yourself and just keep going. It does take a lot of time to figure all these things out. I've definitely, tears have been shed the first time I formatted a book. I thought I was going to, just my brain was going to implode. Yeah. But, you learn it. And so just have to keep going, and don't quit. If it's what you want, then you should just keep trying.
Yeah, definitely. And there's always stories about overnight successes, but usually there's about 3 or 4 years of hard work before the overnight success.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's so easy to get caught up in, you see someone post on Facebook and, oh, my first book made the USA Today list and yada, yada, yada. And that's great for that person. But I think, I don't know anyone in writing or publishing whose career is a straight upward line.
Yeah.
Some books do better than others, and you kind of have to learn how to ride the whole thing out. And so, no, you might not start out, out of the gates with a big hit, but you have to keep trying. And that just means that this is your particular path, and stay on it and try not to get discouraged.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it. Those are your 5 questions. Thank you very much for coming on, Karen.
All right. Thank you.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.